I would like to interrupt this regularly scheduled interview to make an announcement. Norsefire did nothing wrong. Okay, that's good, so let's get into V for Vendetta. This is perhaps one of the most politically incoherent movies ever made, but I think I would recommend watching it just before we get into the plot and everything, because it really shows how the left doesn't understand us at all. Um, I think the right very easily can understand the left. I used to be on the left. I understand the way they think. I understand why they think the way they think. I can get inside of their worldview. I don't have to do necessarily what they did here to prove why they're bad or why what they want is bad. V for Vendetta shows the left does no conception of how we think or how the right exists. Instead, rather than actually attack any intellectual or spiritual aspect of the right, they just basically turn everyone in who's a member of the right in the movie into a sociopathic mass murderer who's also a sadistic nut. It should be noted that none of these people really do the horrible things they do for political or ideological reasons, with maybe one or two exceptions. They certainly don't need to go about things the way they go about it. They're just that the author really can't think of any other way to portray the right. They literally can't launch any sort of real criticism of the right, so instead they just basically turn everybody into a sociopath, and we'll go into this. Um, so V for Vendetta. Before we get into it, I just have to address the whole Fox mask thing. Guy Fawkes was like the far right of his day. What he wanted to do was assassinate, I think it was Charles I, and make England a Catholic state again. To turn back a century of parliamentary reform and democratization, and to reinstitute, or rather institute, absolutism. Guy Fawkes actually went overseas and fought for the Spanish monarchy in the 80 Years' War against the Protestant Dutch. He was the member of a Catholic cabal of reactionaries. So why Guy Fawkes is used as a symbol for far left anarchism when in reality he's probably much closer to Norsefire? I don't know. It doesn't really make much sense, and this is just kind of a thing with Alan Moore. Alan Moore is a hack. I've said it for years, and I'll say it now. I don't think the man honestly really knows what he's doing. He can appear profound. He can make political statements. He just I think I don't regard his work as being particularly good. Watchmen is okay, but I think what really happened was he was kind of a pioneer. I don't think his work was particularly good, but he really did invent the graphic novel genre as being distinct from comics and manga. And it was kind of an obvious thing to do, and it was going to probably happen anyways, just because modern technology makes drawing a lot faster and easier, and printing costs have gone down over time. So I think it was something that was going to happen. I think he was the first person to put any kind of real effort into it and to try to make a conventional story. And it just kind of found a niche market of like nerds who wanted to appear clever and politically astute. And so they like Alan Moore's work. It's like it's so deep. But Alan Moore's a hack. He's like this crazy anarchist who worships like a snake god or something. He's a really weird guy, and he has some really deep psychological issues, as can be evidenced by his obsession with rape. All of his stories have at least one rape, often multiple ones, and it's almost played for laughs in a non-ironic way. He's really creepy. He's I think he's nuts, and I think for V for Vendetta really kind of does capture his mindset. So what is V for Vendetta? V for Vendetta takes place in the 2020s, where the world has undergone a collapse, and there is civil war, anarchy, terrorism, disease, and famine everywhere. And this is very important to keep in mind as we're going through this. This is not just Britain that's going through a hard time. The whole world has gone through a hard time. Um, America is referenced as going through a civil war and is asking Britain for medical supplies in exchange for food. So America has collapsed into a civil war. Most of the world has collapsed into a civil war. Britain remains, as far as we can tell, the only politically stable country that we know of. Britain is completely politically stable with virtually no dissent, virtually no crime, and virtually no starvation. The people don't live the best lives, but their quality of life in not Norsefire Britain doesn't seem to be particularly worse than modern Britain, especially as modern Britain is transitioning and getting poorer. So, Norsefire is pretty much the most awesome political party ever. So they are a neo-fascist, white nationalist, British nationalist, Christian political party that was founded by members of the Conservative Party when it was shown that the two existing political parties could not deal with the crisis of post-modernity. Basically, we always talk about how it's happening, and it's happening refers to the day that all the internal contradictions and weaknesses of the current system come crashing down, and they begin to compound on one another. Muslims turn on feminists, when blacks turn on gays, when the rich turn on the poor, etc. And it's shown that the emperor has no clothes, and the whole thing just falls to the ground. During this happening phase, the Norsefire wins an election, as far as we can tell, completely legitimately. Although, as with all movies like this, the fact that they legitimately won an election doesn't really matter. I think they won with like 94% of the vote, but that doesn't mean they have a right to govern, and that doesn't mean they have a right to pass whatever laws they want um, for reasons that are never explained. I don't understand why they aren't legitimate. So, Britain has become a fascist police state ruled by the Norsefire Party. Political opponents, Muslims, immigrants, homosexuals, and other undesirables are imprisoned in concentration camps. Now, this just shows their mindset. Why wouldn't you just send them back to their home countries? Why does Britain even? I don't get it. Why does Britain allow immigration if it's ruled by a neo-fascist party? Why are there even Muslims in Britain if Norsefire's been in power for a decade or more? I mean, do you get what I mean? Or this is V for Vendetta. So this was written in 1984. So they've been in power for 40 years and they still have minorities? You think they would have solved that problem one way or another? But no, there has to exist minorities for people to repress. This was written even before the latest wave of mass immigration. So they probably could have just sent most of the people back then would have been first generation. They could have just sent them and their families back home, and it would have been over. The fact that this movie refuses to acknowledge this just shows the mindset of the people who made it. So we have Eevee, who I personally hate. She works for a television studio, and she is completely ordinary. She's played by Natalie Portman, and she kind of lives up to her name. So let's see here. So Eevee is out walking past curfew, and a group of secret police decide to rape her. Why did they decide to rape her? I don't know. Because all police are just corrupt. Fuck the police. Yeah. Well, they're like, well, it's secret police. Yeah. Well, secret police aren't always like that. Um, it's this it's this idea that just there are societies that don't have secret police. Every society in existence has secret police. They may call it something different, but every society has plainclothes detectives. Every society has state intelligence. Every society has people who disguise themselves or operate in the shadows to fight crime. It may be more prevalent in authoritarian societies, but every society has it. Um, you can just look at the news and someone will be arrested in basically what amounts to a secret police operation. So it's bullshit. So what she gets saved by V, who's wearing a Guy Fawkes mask. and he kills them with his knives in one of only two action scenes in this whole movie. They don't really like action scenes for some reason. So yeah, so it rescues Evie Hammond, a woman who works at state-run British television network, which sounds way better than the BBC. I actually really like it. They have this kind of like Bill O'Reilly guy who does these big epic speeches about like degeneracy and stuff. So then he blows up the Old Bailey criminal court building by fireworks in the 1812 overture. So the chief of police is given the task of investigating these activities. Well, the party uses the British television to say that it was emergency demolition due to the instability of it. Um, the uh, the um, the party is composed of Creeley, who is the chancellor. There's the Archbishop of Canterbury. There's the head of British Television Network. There's the head of the secret police, and there's the head of normal police. And that seems to make it up. There's no economic guy really represented there, but that's okay. So yeah, they get the main guy, the guy who Inspector Finch, who's going to be the guy who goes and realizes how evil the government is, etc. Now I'd like to keep in mind what has the government actually done so far. They've maintained order at a time where most of the world collapsed. Britain is still a civilization. People still can basically walk the streets when there's not psychotic cops on it without fear. The people still seem to be relatively well fed. The fact that so many of them are fat seem to indicate this. And while there is rationing, um, Britain is pretty small. I mean, if the rest of the world isn't functioning, it kind of makes sense to me that Britain can't provide a full range of products to its people. And this isn't just stuff that we're told through propaganda. This is stuff that they're saying, like when they're alone and no one's watching. Okay, so let's see here. So V shows up at the TV station, and says that he will 1 year later. He takes responsibility for blowing up the building. It says 1 year later, I want you all to meet me outside of British government, the Parliament buildings, and destroy. He will destroy it, and that will bring down the government. The police attempt to capture V, but Eevee helps him escape and is then knocked unconscious. V takes Eevee to his underground home where they engage in lame romantic comedy cliches like watching The Count of Monte Cristo together. Um, there's watching The Count of Monte Cristo together, dancing to music, making toast, that kind of stuff. So V tells her you have to stay here until the next year because the secret police will track you down. Because the secret police are evil because they're trying to capture someone who hijacked a state TV station, blew up a building, and killed a number of secret police officers. Who is clearly a terrorist by any normal definition, particularly since God knows who could have been destroyed when they blew the building up. But that's okay. So let's see here. So she helps him to kill a couple government officials, including a perverted priest by acting as a child prostitute. Oh boy, isn't that just like that's social commentary? Oh, there's a pedophile priest. Wait a minute. So it's okay to kill the pedophile priest, but it's not okay to kill the pedophile Muslims. Is that what you're saying, Alan Moore? 'Cause you make a huge deal in this movie about um, Muslims being oppressed, but they're the ones who are doing the child rape in Britain. And I understand this came out after Rotherham, but we've known about this stuff for decades. I mean, come on. I mean, this came out before Rotherham. So yeah, they kill him. They kill the guy who's on TV. They kill a couple of the other guys. So she escapes after they kill the priest and goes to the home of Gordon Dietrich, her boss, who's played by Stephen Fry. He is a rampant partaker of he's just gay. We'll just go with that. So yeah, he's gay, and he pretends to be a womanizer in order to conceal it, because if he was honest, he would be executed. The funny thing is, he's not just gay. He's into like sadomasochistic, like extreme sexual perversion, and he has all these like perverted pictures all over the place and shit. So he like it's I don't really get what they're trying to say. They're like, oh, he's not a sexual deviant. He's just like everyone else. But then he's like into sadomasochistic like bondage and whipping and shit like that. And then we're supposed to be like, oh yeah, he's so sympathetic. I can relate to that. Um, he also keeps a copy of the Quran that he likes to read. And I'm like, well, why? Why does the gay guy like to read the Quran? You do know what they do to gays in Muslim countries. I mean, these people are so paranoid. Christians don't do shit. They haven't done shit in decades. Oh, they might be mean. They might pray for you. Oh no, baby. They don't throw them off of buildings like they do in ISIS does. They don't like kill them or castrate them or do any other shit like build walls and drop them on them like the Taliban do. But no, it's the Quran and subversive paintings and all that stuff. So in other words, he just in every way possible he's kind of a swipple degenerate. Um, and I'm not just that's not referring to his homosexuality. That's just referring to his attitude, more so his just obsession with like a religion that would have him killed because he needs to status signal how tolerant he is. Um, his need to appear to be a womanizer. I don't know. I just hate him. So then the homoerotic photographs by Robert Mapplethorpe. Robert Mapplethorpe, the biggest degenerate who's ever lived, who made the Piss Christ. Right. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the summary. Okay. So let's see here. So Fitch learns that V is the result of experimentations on humans. His targets tortured him while he was detained. So yeah. So Gordon, the boss, who's played by Stephen Fry, performs a satire of the government on his show. His home is raided and Eevee is captured. Um, so they decide to kill him not because he's gay, not because of the satire in the show, but because he had a Quran. So they execute him for having a Quran. Um, all I can say is it's the mildest of mild concern when he died. I actually burst out laughing in the theater. And this was back when I considered myself a man of the left. But just, he was executed for having a Quran is just like every lame cliche. Like, there's no attempt to engage intellectually with why people might not want Islam to be prevalent in Western countries, why they might have a problem with him. So Stephen Fry basically plays himself. He's kind of a degenerate prick who destroys society through the media. So yeah, just himself. I don't even know that much about him. Just every time I've watched him, it makes me want to like just cut myself. Okay, so she's imprisoned and tortured for information about V, with her only solace being a note written by actress Valerie Page, arrested for being a lesbian. I'm not sure, but given that she's an actress and that they arrested her, I'm going to say that her name was Valerie Page, etc. So Eevee is told she will be executed unless she reveals V's location. But when she says she would rather die, she's released. Well, she can't reveal his location. She doesn't know where he lives. It's pointless. Um, so I guess it was a test to whether or not she would try to rat him out. So it turns out her imprisonment and torture were staged by V to free her from her fears. The note was real, passed from Valerie to V when he was imprisoned. He also informs her that Dietrich has been executed when the Quran was found at his home. Um, it's kind of implied to me, at least, that Valerie, the lesbian actress who wrote the notes, was actually V. Why he has a male voice now, I'm not sure. It would explain his attraction to Eevee, but he's just kind of a really weird guy. So maybe like the thing got rid of his boobs and like gave him a deep voice. Otherwise, if he's not Valerie, it's just really random and out of place. So yeah, so she leaves him, be promising to return before November 5th, and she's angry at V. But she's realizes she's become a stronger person because V, who's an anarchist sociopath, kidnaps her, tortures her, for a full year. But she's not afraid anymore, because she has Stockholm syndrome. So as November 5th nears, V has distributed thousands of Guy Fawkes masks and causes chaos in London, and the population questions party rule because that's how it works. Postal Service? What's the Postal Service? They don't check shit. Um, no one would naturally be loyal to a government that's ensured stability and relative economic prosperity during a cataclysm. No, the people wouldn't back Norsefire. Instead, they would back some Randy in a mask who just blows shit up and seems to have no real ideology or plan. So, on the eve of November 5th, Eevee visits V, who shows her an explosive laden train in an abandoned London Underground station set to destroy Parliament. He leaves it to Eevee to decide whether to use it. V meets party leader Creedy, with whom he made a deal to surrender um, in exchange for the Chancellor's execution. After Creedy executes the Chancellor, V reneges on his deal and kills Creedy and his men. Mortally wounded, he returns. He killed the entire government of the entire leadership of Norsefire. Good thing that there's no one else in the party and there's no plan of succession. Wait, what? You'd think there'd be some sort of chain of succession, considering how old these guys are and how a lot of them don't seem to be in the best physical shape. But no, there's no chain of succession, or V killed them off of camera. So yeah, so he leaves the choice up to Eevee. Boring, lame Eevee who has the personality of cornflake. Actually, cornflakes are kind of tasty. The personality of wet glue. Eevee is a complete non-entity in this movie, as is V for that matter. V is just kind of quirky, superficially charming, etc. But beneath that all, you just get the impression he's kind of a sociopath who just wants to watch the world burn. I don't really think there's anything that ideological about him. He makes vague appeals to freedom, but he just really seems like he wants to get some revenge. So Eevee places V's body aboard the train. She is found by Finch. Disillusioned by the party's regime, Finch allows Eevee to send the train. Thousands of unarmed Londoners wearing Guy Fawkes masks march towards Parliament without orders. The military allows the crowd to pass. Parliament is destroyed as Finch asks Eevee for V's identity, to which she replies, "He was all of us." Which is the most, like, fucking postmodern thing I've ever heard. No, he wasn't. He was a specific person who was born, lived, and died. He wasn't all of you. He wasn't an idea behind a mask. He was just some Randy. And this kind of sums up the problem with V for Vendetta. It's ideologically kind of incoherent. Um, it doesn't appear to really believe in democracy because the party clearly won the election, and I would imagine if they held an election and the party won again, regardless of how free and fair it was, Alan Moore and the people who support this movie would not accept the results of this election. The movie champions Islam, which is pretty much the most anti-freedom, anti-woman, anti-gay ideology the world has ever created. Um, which indicates as a matter of religious custom that gays should be executed. So they it advocates Islam more than almost anything else, because democracy it intrinsically rejects. I'm assuming it's against free speech because they'd be against anyone who supported Norsefire. It's against economic and social stability because Britain is shown to be socially stable where nowhere else on Earth is. It's against having an army, having a police force, etc. So it is basically just kind of a basic bitch anarchist movie. Um, the plot is okay. I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's kind of interesting. It's not a bad film at all. I know I give very abridged summaries of the plot, but it is kind of disappointing. It focuses too much on Eevee. It's a problem that a lot of these films have. Like, you really would rather know more about V or more about the party or more historical background. Instead, we just have to endure scenes of Eevee just being boring and ordinary. I know you need a voice of the viewer, but the voice of the viewer actually needs to do more than just get tortured and have some other lame shit happen to her for 2 hours. More background, kind of the more ins and outs of how daily life actually works, rather than her just fucking off with V, would have been good. Overall, though, I really failed to see what Norsefire did. Um, oh wait, I forgot something because it was so random. Okay, sorry. It was revealed. My bad. I missed something. That there was a false flag. There was a false flag attack that Norsefire did with a bioweapon. At least that's what V claims. I mean, why are we supposed to believe everything he said? I don't know. But there was a bio attack with a false flag bio attack that killed 100,000 people and led to the rise to power of Norsefire. Could Norsefire have won the election anyways? Probably, given the social chaos of the time. Um, does it ultimately really matter about the bioweapon when the vast majority of Norsefire's membership, including much of the elite council, know nothing about it, and it basically took place during another era? No. If we're going to hold people to that standard, then Alan Moore should be jailed because of the anarchist who shot William McKinley. The guilt by association thing is just an impractical standard to hold. Um, so yeah, I actually don't really see what's so bad about Norsefire. I'd probably vote for them if they were on the ballot. They're a hell of a lot better than most of the political offerings we have these days. Um, England prevails. This is Argent Templar signing out.